All right, let's talk about something real for a second. You ever notice how some women seem to have this almost magical effect on men? Like one day a guy's casually interested and literally overnight he's completely obsessed, texting nonstop, wanting to see her again immediately, telling his friends about her. It's like a switch flipped in his brain. And no matter what he does, he just can't get her out of his mind. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Isn't that just about physical chemistry? Isn't it about being exceptionally attractive? Or some kind of magical connection that either exists or doesn't? Nope, not even close. Because let me tell you something, psychological obsession isn't random or based on luck. It's about understanding specific psychological triggers that most women have no idea exist. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who initially you weren't even particularly drawn to, but after one meaningful interaction, you couldn't stop thinking about them? Maybe it was something they said. Maybe it was how they made you feel validated in a way no one else had. Maybe it was the unexpected way they challenged you. That's because true obsession is a psychological experience. It's not just about what a man sees in you. It's about the emotional imprint you leave on his mind. And if you want to make a man obsessed with you literally overnight, if you want to be the woman he can't stop thinking about from the moment he wakes up, then you have to understand the psychology that drives obsession. That's what we're going to talk about today. Because creating instant obsession isn't about manipulating anyone, playing mind games, or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about understanding the subtle, powerful psychological triggers that make a man's brain chemically addicted to thoughts of you. Not just physically, but emotionally. So if you're ready to become the woman he can't get out of his head, if you're ready to understand the secret psychology that creates instant obsession that goes beyond simple attraction, let's break this down. I'm about to share with you 4 powerful psychological keys that make a man obsessed with you literally overnight. Because when you master these psychological triggers, he won't just think about you occasionally. He'll feel like his every waking thought is consumed by you. The power of pattern interruption. Obsession begins when expectations are broken. That's something most people don't understand. The power of pattern interruption. Obsession begins when expectations are broken. That's something most people don't understand. They assume that being agreeable, consistent, and perfectly aligned with what a man wants will make him obsessed with you. But the truth is, obsession isn't built through predictability. It's built through pattern interruption. That jarring moment when someone doesn't respond the way your brain expected, and suddenly your entire attention is focused, alert, trying to make sense of what just happened. Think about the last time something completely unexpected happened in your day. Maybe someone gave you a compliment that caught you off guard, or maybe someone responded to a situation in a way you never would have predicted. What made it stick in your mind? It wasn't that it happened. It was that it broke your pattern of expectations, causing your brain to flag it as important, something to keep thinking about, something to solve. That's how obsession works. And when it comes to making a man obsessed with you overnight, understanding the power of pattern interruption is everything. Because here's what most women do. They meet a guy, they like him, and they follow the expected social script perfectly. They laugh at all his jokes, even the ones that aren't funny. They agree with his opinions. They try to mirror his energy. They're endlessly accommodating, never challenging, always predictable. And they do this because they're afraid that if they don't follow the script perfectly, he'll lose interest. But that's not how psychological obsession works. The more predictable you are, the less mental real estate you occupy in his mind. That's not to say you should be disagreeable or create drama for the sake of it, but you do need to break his patterns in ways that make his brain sit up and pay attention. That's what keeps his mind returning to thoughts of you when you're not around. One of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to create attraction is being too consistent too soon. Imagine you're watching a mystery show, and in the very first episode, the detective follows a perfectly predictable path of investigation that leads exactly where you thought it would. Would you be compelled to watch the next episode? Probably not. The reason you keep watching mystery shows is because they incorporate twists and turns you didn't see coming. Your brain loves the challenge of being surprised. It's the same in dating. If you're completely predictable, if you follow the exact social script he's experienced dozens of times before, there's nothing for his brain to solve, no mystery to unravel, no reason for his mind to keep returning to thoughts of you. Now, let's talk about how you actually create pattern interruption in a way that feels authentic. One of the most powerful ways to do this is through unexpected vulnerability. That means sharing something real about yourself in a moment when most people would stick to small talk. Not oversharing or trauma dumping, but allowing a genuine moment of humanity to shine through your social mask. Men are naturally drawn to women who surprise them with depth. A woman who can smoothly transition from laughing about something lighthearted to briefly sharing a meaningful insight about herself, then back to something lighter. That creates a pattern interruption that makes him think, wait, who is she really? I need to know more. And that wondering, that's the beginning of obsession. That's what keeps his mind returning to you because you've shown him there are layers to discover. Another powerful way to create pattern interruption is through calibrated challenge. When you're with him, instead of agreeing with everything, playfully challenge him on something he says. Not in a confrontational way, but with a smile and genuine curiosity. Really? You think that? That's interesting. I've always seen it differently because this creates an unexpected moment in his experience. Most women he meets are trying to prove compatibility, not thoughtfully challenging his perspectives. A lot of women make the mistake of thinking that if a guy likes them, he wants someone who makes everything easy and comfortable. And while comfort has its place, it's actually slight discomfort, the good kind that comes from being mentally stimulated, that creates obsession. When someone makes you think in new ways, when they don't respond exactly as you predicted, your brain keeps returning to those interactions, trying to make sense of them. This is why the most obsession-inducing interactions are the ones where there's a blend of connection and challenge. Think of it like the perfect workout. If it's too easy, you don't grow. If it's too hard, you give up. But when it's just challenging enough to push you slightly outside your comfort zone, that's where growth happens. That's where obsession begins. In relationships, the same principle applies. If you're completely predictable, always agreeable, always available, always saying what you think he wants to hear, you become forgettable. But when there's a little unexpectedness, a little I didn't see that coming, that's when his brain flags you as someone significant. That's when obsession takes root. Now, this doesn't mean you should be artificially unpredictable or play mind games. What it does mean is that you should be brave enough to be authentic in a world where most people hide behind social scripts. It means you should be confident enough to occasionally break patterns instead of always trying to fit into them. And perhaps most importantly, it means you should trust in your own depth. Women who understand psychological obsession don't feel the need to fit perfectly into someone else's expectations. They don't try to convince a man to want them by being exactly what they think he wants. They simply show up as their full, complex selves in a way that naturally creates pattern interruptions. Think of the women who become instant obsessions. They don't follow predictable scripts. They don't give expected answers. They don't fit neatly into categories. They simply exist with a kind of authentic confidence that disrupts patterns without even trying. That's the energy you want to embody because when you do, men will naturally start becoming obsessed with thoughts of you. They'll start replaying your interactions in their heads. They'll start analyzing things you said. They'll start looking forward to discovering more layers of who you are, not because you're playing games, but because you're brave enough to break patterns in a world where most people are afraid to. Emotional contrast is key. When people talk about creating obsession, they often focus on consistency. They think it's about always being positive, always being agreeable, always maintaining the same pleasant emotional note. And while consistency has its place, that's not what makes a man obsessed with you overnight. Physical attraction might spark initial interest, but if you want to make a man psychologically obsessed with you in a way that keeps him thinking about you around the clock, you have to understand the power of emotional contrast. Men might appreciate a consistently pleasant interaction, but what makes them obsessed, what keeps them thinking about a woman hours and days after they've met her, is experiencing emotional contrast in her presence. A guy can spend time with the most consistently positive woman in the world, but if she doesn't create emotional contrast, if she doesn't take him through different emotional states during their time together, the interaction fades from memory quickly. Think about the movies or shows that have had the biggest emotional impact on you. Chances are they weren't just happy the whole way through or just serious throughout. They took you on an emotional journey, perhaps from tension to laughter, from comfort to surprise, from intellectual stimulation to emotional resonance. They created contrast, and that contrast is what made them memorable. That's what creates psychological obsession. That's what keeps someone's mind returning to thoughts of you. And if you want to make a man obsessed with you overnight, you have to create this emotional contrast during your interactions. One of the most powerful psychological triggers for obsession that no one talks about is emotional variety. When a woman can guide a conversation from light to deep and back again, when she can create moments of tension and release them with humor, when she can shift from intellectual conversation to playful banter, that's when his brain chemistry starts to change. Because men don't just become obsessed with women who make them feel good. They become obsessed with women who make them feel everything. Intrigue is what makes someone unforgettable. It's what makes a man lie in bed that night, replaying every moment of your interaction, analyzing how you made him feel so many different things in such a short time. When a man experiences emotional contrast with you, he'll start becoming psychologically dependent on your presence in a way that goes beyond simple attraction. Now, this doesn't mean you need to be emotionally volatile or create artificial drama. What it does mean is that you should allow a full spectrum of emotion into your interactions rather than staying in the safe zone of pleasant agreeability. Be interested in deeper topics. Shift from intellectual conversation to playful teasing. Create moments of tension through eye contact, then break them with a joke. Share something vulnerable, then transition back to something light. When you do this, you're not just another pleasant interaction in his day. You become an emotional experience that his brain doesn't know how to file away and forget. Because the truth is, most men aren't used to experiencing a wide range of emotions in a single interaction, especially with someone they've just met. They're used to surface level pleasantness, the same safe emotional notes, the same predictable emotional landscape. But when a woman comes along who takes them through different emotional states, who makes them think, then laugh, then feel understood, then feel challenged, it creates a kind of emotional imprint that becomes the foundation of obsession. And here's where things get interesting from a psychological perspective. When a man experiences emotional contrast with you, when he feels different emotional states in your presence, his brain creates a much more complex and complete neural network associated with you. Rather than a simple, one-dimensional memory, you become stored as a rich, multi-layered experience that his brain keeps returning to, trying to process. Think about the difference between a song that uses just one note and a song with a rich, complex melody. If you play a single note over and over, the brain quickly adapts and stops paying attention. But a melody with contrast, soft and loud moments, fast and slow sections, major and minor shifts, keeps the brain engaged, keeps it wanting to hear more. But when you take him on an emotional journey, when you create peaks and valleys in the emotional landscape of your interaction, that's when he starts to become obsessed. That's when he starts to feel like you're unlike anyone he's ever met, because most people don't create that level of emotional contrast. Now, emotional contrast isn't just about making him feel good. It's about making him feel everything more intensely. It's about creating moments of tension, then release, moments of connection, then playful distance, moments of depth, then lightness. Because here's the thing. A man can be intrigued by your personality, but if he doesn't experience emotional contrast with you, the obsession will always have a ceiling. Emotional contrast is what turns attraction into obsession. And what creates emotional contrast? It's being multidimensional enough to show different facets of who you are within a single interaction. If he feels understood, if he feels challenged, if he feels both comfortable and slightly off balance, if he feels like he's discovering new layers of you with each passing moment, that's when he starts to form a psychological dependency. That's when he starts to feel like he needs more of you, not just once more. This is why being emotionally authentic rather than artificially consistent is such an underrated quality. Most people try to maintain a pleasant, consistent front, but if you can be brave enough to be joyful when you feel joy, thoughtful when something strikes you as important, playfully challenging when you have a different perspective, or genuinely moved when something touches you, without overplaying any emotion, it creates an interaction so much richer than what most people experience. And here's where the real psychological trigger happens. When a man experiences this kind of emotional contrast with you, his brain creates a biochemical cocktail that becomes literally addictive. Different emotional states release different neurochemicals, and when these vary throughout your interaction, it creates a kind of neurological signature that his brain craves to experience again. The mistake most people make in creating attraction is that they try to maintain a single emotional note, usually trying to be consistently pleasing or consistently impressive. But real obsession isn't built on consistency. It's built on contrast, depth, and the rich tapestry of genuine emotional experience. If a man always knows exactly how he's going to feel with you, if every interaction hits the same emotional notes, if you never take him through different states, he won't develop that psychological obsession. But when you create emotional contrast, not through manipulation, but through authentic expression of your multidimensional nature, it keeps him engaged on a neurological level. It makes him want to understand all the different sides of you. It makes him invested in the experience of you because he starts to crave the unique emotional journey that only you can provide. And here's the most important part. Men don't just become obsessed with how women look or what they say. They become obsessed with how women make them feel. If you create emotional contrast, if you make him experience a spectrum of emotional states, if you make him feel more alive and emotionally engaged than he does with anyone else, he'll be psychologically obsessed. Because true obsession doesn't come from predictability. It comes from experiencing something emotionally rich, varied, and unlike anything else in his life. Sensory anchoring, the art of creating psychological triggers. Obsession isn't just about the moments when you're together. It's about how you linger in his mind when you're apart. And one of the most powerful ways to create that lingering obsession is through sensory anchoring. This is the art of deliberately associating yourself with specific sensory experiences that trigger thoughts of you whenever he encounters them again. Because here's the thing, a man might be drawn to your presence initially, but what makes him obsessed is the way your memory ambushes him throughout his day through sensory reminders. Think about the memories that seem to ambush you out of nowhere. Maybe it was a song that instantly transported you back to a specific moment in your life. Maybe it was a particular scent that suddenly flooded your mind with thoughts of someone you once knew. Maybe it was a specific sensation that triggered a cascade of memories. Those weren't random connections. They were sensory anchors, powerful neural pathways where a specific sensory input became inseparably linked to an emotional experience. That's what you want to create with a man you're interested in. You want to deliberately establish sensory anchors that trigger thoughts of you when you're not around. You want to become associated with specific sensations that he encounters regularly in his day-to-day life, so that thoughts of you consistently find their way back into his consciousness. Let's start with the power of olfactory anchoring. This might seem like a minor detail, but from a neurological perspective, scent is one of the most direct paths to creating obsession. A distinctive scent can bypass the logical brain and connect directly to emotional memory. It's why certain smells can instantly transport you back to childhood or remind you vividly of someone from your past. If you have a signature scent that's uniquely yours, something that he doesn't encounter elsewhere in his daily life, it creates a powerful neural pathway in his brain. Every time he smells it, whether you're wearing it or he encounters something similar, his brain immediately activates thoughts of you. This isn't just about wearing perfume. It's about creating a scent experience that becomes exclusively associated with you in his mind. And it's not just about how your perfume smells on first application, but how it evolves throughout your time together, how it mingles with your natural scent, how it leaves traces on his clothes after you've hugged, how it creates an olfactory signature that his brain flags as distinctly, uniquely you. This doesn't mean overwhelming his senses. It means creating a subtle scent identity that his brain begins to seek out, even unconsciously. Now, let's talk about tactile anchoring. Touch creates some of the most powerful neurological imprints. But here's what most people don't understand about creating obsession through touch. It's not about quantity, it's about distinctive quality. The most obsession-inducing touch isn't constant contact. It's distinctive touch that stands out from his normal tactile experiences. It's the way your hand feels different from others when it brushes against his. It's the specific way you touch his arm when making a point. It's the unique pressure of your hug that feels different from how others embrace him. Men don't just remember that they were touched, they remember the distinctive quality of a specific person's touch. If you're constantly in physical contact, those sensations become normalized and lose their anchor potential. But if you create distinct tactile moments, the specific way you briefly touch his shoulder when you're excited about something, the distinctive way your hand feels when it briefly rests on his, it creates a sensory anchor that his brain flags as significant. And then there's auditory anchoring, the way you speak, specific phrases you use, the unique cadence of your laugh. These can all become powerful sensory anchors that trigger thoughts of you. Your voice has a specific frequency, a unique tonal quality that distinguishes it from everyone else he knows. If you rush through conversations or speak in ways that blend with how everyone else communicates, your voice won't become a distinct auditory anchor. But if you develop vocal distinctiveness, a slightly slower pace than most people use, specific phrases that become associated with you, a laugh that has a unique quality to it, these become auditory anchors that trigger thoughts of you whenever he hears anything similar. A man might not consciously register why certain sounds suddenly make him think of you, but neurologically, his brain has created an anchor that activates memories of you when triggered by similar auditory input. Think about how some people's voices instantly make you feel a certain way, how specific speech patterns can immediately bring someone to mind. That's not coincidence, it's sensory anchoring at work. Now, visual anchoring. This is where lasting impressions are cemented. Most people underestimate the power of creating distinctive visual memories, but specific visual moments can become some of the most powerful triggers for obsessive thoughts. It's not about how conventionally attractive you are. It's about creating visual moments that stand out from his everyday visual experience. When you wear a distinctive color that no one else in his life wears frequently, when you have a specific way of smiling that's different from others, when you create a visual signature through how you move or express yourself, it establishes visual anchors that trigger thoughts of you whenever he encounters similar visual input. When you create a visual moment by holding his gaze with an expression that communicates something beyond words, it burns into his memory in a way that generic interactions never could. And that's rare in a world where most social interactions follow predictable visual patterns. A woman who creates distinctive visual memories becomes visually anchored in his mind. But here's the real secret to sensory anchoring. It's not just about establishing individual sensory connections. It's about creating multi-sensory experiences that become uniquely associated with you. If your distinctive scent, your unique touch, your specific vocal qualities, and your visual distinctiveness all come together in a single interaction, it creates a multi-sensory anchor that's neurologically powerful. And then there's the power of sensory incongruence. If you want to be truly unforgettable, create sensory experiences that contain an element of unexpectedness. Perhaps you look delicate but have an unexpectedly firm handshake. Maybe you speak softly but have moments of animated expressiveness. It's the sensory contrast that often creates the strongest anchors. If all your sensory qualities align perfectly with what's expected, the brain files the experience away as predictable. But when there's an element of sensory surprise, even a small one, it creates a neurological flag that makes the memory more accessible, more likely to resurface in his thoughts later. Men don't just become obsessed with women for abstract reasons. They become obsessed because women create sensory experiences that their brains can't stop returning to. They become obsessed because certain sensations in their everyday lives have become inextricably linked to memories of a specific woman. And here's the best part about sensory anchoring. None of this requires pretending to be someone you're not. It's not about manufacturing an artificial sensory experience. It's about becoming more intentional about the natural sensory qualities you already possess. It's about recognizing the unique sensory signature that you naturally create and making it slightly more distinctive, slightly more memorable. Because the women who create the most powerful obsessions aren't trying to fit a generic sensory mold. They're embracing and slightly amplifying what makes their sensory presence unique. They're creating sensory anchors, not through manipulation, but through authentic sensory distinctiveness. And when you do that, when you master the art of sensory anchoring, that's when a man becomes obsessed with you on a level that bypasses conscious thought. That's when he finds himself thinking about you without knowing exactly why. That's when you've created sensory triggers that consistently bring you back to his mind, even when you're nowhere near him. If there's one psychological trigger that creates instant obsession, it's self-contained confidence. Listen, obsession isn't created by neediness or external validation. It's created by encountering someone who exists completely in their own self-assured reality. Confidence isn't about being the loudest or most assertive person in the room. Psychological confidence is about how completely you trust your own internal valuation system rather than looking to others for validation. When a woman's sense of worth comes from within rather than from the reaction she gets from others, it creates a gravitational pull that's neurologically intoxicating. It's the way she can sit comfortably in silence while everyone else rushes to fill it. It's the way she states her perspective without needing agreement. It's the way she offers validation that feels meaningful precisely because it's not freely given to everyone. It's the way she occupies space without demanding attention, comfortable in her own presence, regardless of who's watching. When a woman embodies that kind of self-contained assurance, it creates an immediate psychological obsession. Because ultimately, men don't just become obsessed with how women look or what they say. They become obsessed with the feeling of wanting to be admitted into a reality where someone is so complete unto themselves that they don't need external validation to feel whole. Making a man obsessed with you overnight isn't about being perfect or playing mind games. It's about creating a psychological experience through pattern interruption, emotional contrast, sensory anchoring, and self-contained confidence. When you understand and apply these psychological principles, you don't just briefly capture his attention. You create an experience his brain chemically craves. You become unforgettable. You become the woman he's obsessed with, not just for a moment, but in a way that lingers in his mind like a psychological imprint he can't shake. A woman he doesn't just think about occasionally, but one he's psychologically compelled to pursue.